Good morning. We are here this morning with Britt Phillips with Complete Land Organics. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Casey?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Sure thing. I'm happy to.
Now, tell us a little bit about how you got started, and you've kind of exploded. We were talking a little bit off air about how crazy it's been. How has this year gone for you? And, what sets you apart from all these other companies? Those are some things I definitely want to know.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I would say that, I've always had a very deep connection to the natural world and to nature. And I've always been somebody who's wanted to be outside way over ever wanting to be inside. So it made a lot of sense even as a kid, like even as a young teenager, that I would probably end up in a field where I was working outside and I was working with Mother Nature. So
Yeah.
basically I started out as a like a professional gardener, a professional fine gardener when I was in my late teens. And prior to that, I had done a lot of like work with like the Appalachian Mountain Club and that kind of thing. So I was very used to working outside, working with the elements, working in bad weather, that kind of thing. And physically working, that's what I always loved to do too. So basically, I landscaped, I gardened, I did a lot of, garden design, plant design, that kind of thing for many, many years. And then in 2009, I took this 5-day course that really pretty much changed the course of my career life. So it was put on by the Organic Land Care Program, which is now done through the Northeast Organic Farming Association in Connecticut specifically. They still do these courses. They do at least a few a year, I believe. So it was a 5-day course on organic land care. And specifically, it was very strange to me too at the time. The 3-hour workshop on organic turf management just kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
And I think it was the combination of the activist part of me, who's always wanted to protect nature and make sure that all the creatures great and small are able to live the lives they want to live out in the natural world and everything. And I think there's been a lot of time where I've really worried that the direction that we've gone in as a society is generally we have a lot of chemicals in our everyday lives. So
Yeah.
whether it's lawn chemicals, household cleaning, that kind of thing. So when I heard this fellow named Chip Osborne do the workshop on organic turf management, it just really, I was like, I have to do this. And I remember driving home that night from that class saying, like, knowing that this huge thing had just changed. And so I started basically going to all of my existing customers with the business that I owned at the time and sitting down at their kitchen table and saying, hey, would you like to try out this organic lawn care thing? I want to do this within the company that I owned at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them were like, yep, that's great, let's do it. So basically, I started in probably it was about 2009, and that's when I started sort of the organic lawn care thing. And I really loved it. And a lot of it is so much about soil and soil science and working with biology in soil. And again, just working with Mother Nature to have a beautiful, healthy, green lawn, as opposed to just pretty much blanketing your backyard in really gross toxic lawn chemicals that are not good on multiple different levels. So So basically I started back then, and then in 2014, I decided to go off on my own and really pretty much just run only an organic lawn care company. And so that's when I created Complete Land Organics in 2014, and did a lot of stuff on my own for the first few years.
Yeah.
And then eventually, hired my first employee, and it's just sort of, like you said, it's kind of exploded from there.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, I did not get into this business really because I was like obsessed with lawns or anything like that.
Yeah.
I used to actually really be resistant to wanting to talk about lawns when I was more of a professional gardener.
Mhm.
And but when I realized that, so many homeowners, whether they're doing it themselves or they have a company that works for them doing the services, they really had no idea what these materials actually were that were
Mhm.
going down on their properties. And one of the most profound and really sad experiences I had was I had a client in Bedford, New Hampshire, and she had always had standard poodles and always had like 3 or 4 of them at a time. And we gardened for her, and she had I don't know whether I'm allowed to actually say specific company names. They used to be called ChemLawn. I think I can say that. They have a new name now, but for multiple years, and I would watch the dogs go out onto the lawn within a few hours of a treatment being done. And I remember thinking, my gosh, I don't get this, and I really wanted to say something to her at the time, but there's always that weird, just level of appropriateness, and so she came to me shortly after that, and she had 2 of her dogs within a year period both get diagnosed with canine cancers
Oh,
that were specifically related to, basically to lawn chemicals, to pesticides,
wow.
herbicides, yes. And gastrointestinal cancers, because when you think about it, a dog is directly exposed to a lawn system. They are rolling in it, they are running in it, then they're cleaning themselves, they're licking their paws, so she spoke to her vet about it, and her vet asked her, what are you doing on your lawn? And that's when it all just really um, kind of, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
this is what has happened here. So I just think that I was very driven to wanting to educate people, anyone I could really, because, things like that, I mean, that's just, people don't know. People
Mhm.
don't really know. They think because it's still a very kind of normal thing to see these chemical lawn care trucks driving around in their neighborhoods spraying this, you know, uh, awful looking fluorescent liquid that doesn't smell very good, it's like that's still normal. And when I see that now, I mean, I say to myself, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is still happening.
Yeah.
So I just decided I wanted to be a huge part of the change in that, in New Hampshire, and hopefully beyond as well. So
And you're one of the very few, if only, organic lawn care company in New Hampshire, right? Like
correct.
there's no one doing it.
Yes, correct. There's a couple other people, or a few other people. I have somebody that I recommend. We've kind of slowed down at taking lawns in southern New Hampshire. I
Mhm.
have a friend down there who I recommend. He owns Eco Smart Landscaping. He also does no emissions mowing, which is so cool, like
Oh, cool.
battery powered commercial mowers. there's somebody out in the Bennington, Peterborough area, and there is a company down on the seacoast. But yeah, I generally feel like I'm the only game in town, and which is, and actually I have a very good friend up in Meredith, New Hampshire, Real Green Services. He is really moving his conventional lawn care company into organics, and he is like so excited about it. So so there it is happening. There are becoming more people. Frankly, I would love to have more competition, because it would mean that, you know, more lawn care services are doing lawn care the right way, you know.
Yeah.
But yes, it's I think that's the one thing that sometimes is a little overwhelming, is I want to be able, you know, I want to be able to take care of and work with anyone who
Mhm.
comes to us. But then there's that factor of, you know, driving all over the state, which we do a lot of anyway. But yeah, yeah,
No, so to work with you, I mean, I know when you and I first started talking, the big thing you talked about was like testing the soil. And like, to me, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know why you wouldn't do that, but it never occurred to me that it wasn't done. You know what I mean?
yes,
So what
yes.
does taking on a new client look like to you, as far as, you know, what's the process they go through to see what they need, you know?
Yes, yes. And that is like your earlier question. That is kind of what separates us and how we're a bit different, is that basically when I first meet with a potential new client, I'm, you know, I'm going there to do the site analysis and the soil testing. So there's a small fee for that. So, you know, it is different, where generally most companies, you know, they're going and they're taking a look and they're not doing a soil test, and they're not charging for it.
Mhm.
Our initial meeting is like its own little package. So we call that the organic review. And basically, you know, the client is aware of what that is and what we're going to do before I meet with them. And so they know what they're signing up for. They know there's a fee for it. So I go out, and, you know, I have a nice conversation generally with the prospect client, and we look at the lawn together, and I really like to listen to, you know, where they're at and why have they brought me here. And interestingly enough, a lot of people, you know, there's a good portion that have been doing chemical lawn care and have said, you know, I just don't want to put these chemicals on my property any longer. I've got kids, I've got dogs, I have a well. I'm concerned about, you know, the ecosystem around me, the birds, the pollinators. But generally, a lot of my newer customers in the last couple of years have actually been people who never did anything to their lawn, and now want to, because they realize that there's actually an option that they're comfortable with, because
Mhm.
they were never comfortable with the chemical lawn care. But they realize, oh, there's actually like a natural organic option out there now. So
Mhm.
so basically, you know, we talk, I look, I figure out what species are growing there. I've gotten, you know, enough experience behind my belt now that I kind of can look and kind of know what maybe is already going on with the soil. But then I go around to multiple different places on the entire lawn, and I have one sample bag. If it's a bigger lawn, you know, I might do more than one sample. But on a general, you know, homeowner, you know, residential lawn, under 25,000 square feet, which is a little bit over half an acre. I will take, you know, 8, 10, 12 different small samples of soil, a few inches down. I will put that into the one bag. I will continually shake it as I'm walking around the property. And so when I do get those soil test results back, I have a snapshot of the entire soil system.
Mhm.
I take square footage measurements just so I know specifically what size is their lawn, because most of our programs work in 5,000 square foot increments. Um, And then, you know, it's a week, 10 days until I get the results back. And when I send the proposal, their proposal is specifically written and created off of those soil test results.
Okay.
So when you do not do a soil test, you do not know what are the issues with this soil and why is this lawn system not thriving. Lawn chemicals and synthetic fertilizers do an amazing job at camouflaging, masking, and covering up issues with the soil.
Mm-hmm. That
That is why if someone decides they do not want to do a chemical lawn care program anymore, they pull the plug on that. Generally, if they do not put another lawn program in place after that, that soil system and lawn system generally crashes because the grass is no longer getting its steroid fertilizers.
Mm-hmm.
And the pesticides and the herbicides, the materials that are in those, as well as very high salt content that's in synthetic fertilizers, literally kill the life in the soil, the biology. So if the biology is no longer there, dormant, you know, in a very depleted soil, and you've got this grass system on the surface with its root system, if there is no longer anything, you know, where that system is hooked up to like this intravenous drip of, you know, chemicals basically, the soil is in a terrible position to sustain that grass, the plants growing there. So basically, a lot of those lawns will go into a very quickly decline the following year. And I've seen situations where people have lost massive amounts of their lawn and the grass growing there simply because the soil was in such terrible shape that those plants could not survive. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's great when, you know, if you're getting off of a chemical lawn care program and you put an organic program like ours in place right away, because really there isn't much of a transition. Like we start fixing things and, you know, feeding that biology system in the soil right away. So things kind of start to get real activated very quickly. And we're giving nutrition to the grass. Mm-hmm. But that's one thing. I mean, the grass species that we grow in our lawns in New Hampshire and in New England primarily, they're not native species. Their genetics are from Britain, France, you know, Europe, and they, you know, there are specific things that are these lawn species, grass species want, and one of them is nitrogen. So, you know, that's why there's always generally like supplemental nitrogen going down, you know, even in an organic program with organic fertilizer applications. But yeah, so it's so basically, you know, I see some of that once in a while where a lawn has been unplugged from a chemical program and crash. And then, you know, that kind of takes a longer time to bring it back if there's just not a lot of lawn there at the time. But a lot of people who've done nothing, you know, their soil just needs some love. And so we work with a lot of customers like that. We do work with a lot of customers who who don't want to use a chemical lawn care program anymore. So like I said, I write that proposal. It's specifically based off those soil test results. So every one of my clients is getting a customized lawn care program specific to their soil.
What are some common problems that you see? Is there regional problems that you see a common thread through, or, you know, statewide? What are some common things you see that either the soil's missing or,
Yep.
you know, needs in order to like thrive?
Yep. So that's a great question. So basically in New Hampshire, our soils are generally acidic. So, and always moving back to being more acidic. It's because of the ecosystem that is basically in New Hampshire. So most of the time I find low pHs, acidic pHs. these cool season grass species that we want to grow in our lawns, Kentucky bluegrass, perennial rye, fescues, they prefer a neutral pH, so 6.5 to 6.8. So most of the time we're finding that we're having to do lime applications in order to raise that pH. Once in a while, we'll bump into pHs that are too high or too alkaline, and we'll need to lower the pH. So pHs up in the 7s or sometimes the 8s, use elemental sulfur to lower a pH in the soil. But what's interesting is that the biology that these grass species actually want colonizing and residing around their root systems thrives in a neutral pH. So that's another reason why grasses can start to do much better if their pH is in the right place, in the neutral range, because the biology will arrive in that pH. And the biology is really what, I mean, anywhere, anytime you take a look outside and you look at the woods or the trees or your gardens around your home, your vegetable garden, your lawn, whatever, all of those plants actually have a very specific realm of microorganisms that they want living around their root system, because those little guys, those little microbes are actually what, you know, were meant to care for these plants. You know, it's that symbiotic relationship. So we work with that. So generally acidity, low pHs, that's very typical in New Hampshire soils. The other thing I bump into a lot is, like, even in the last 20 years of new construction, generally you know, there's a lot now where developments were completely forested pieces of land. All of that gets removed. And then, you know, maybe a small amount of topsoil is brought in over the top of what was really like a forested soil. And that is not, you know, that soil isn't going to jive with like a lawn system and what those plants, grass wants. And then, you know, a huge problem too these days, I would say, is that soil being bought doesn't really exist anymore, because people are mostly buying dirt, you know, which is like dead, lifeless material, basically. Very small amounts of topsoil still exist. Somebody might sell an old piece of farmland or something like that. That material will be scraped off and brought to, you know, a supplier, and then that supplier might be mixing an excessive amount of sand and other just generally really dead, lifeless material into that small amount of topsoil to make it this much soil, and then they're selling it as loam. And I can't tell you how many tests I do on brand new loam these days, and it comes back generally worse than what is actually on a client's property. So when people say,
which is wild to think about, because you think of lawn care and you think of, oh, most people do it for the, you know, the visual purposes, the aesthetic purposes. But when you talk about lawn care, you're talking about how you can actually like reinvest in your property and not just make your lawn look nice, but actually create a better living environment for all of the species around it and actually improve the environment, like literally.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I tell people, like, and it's, you know, I kid around, but it's true. Like, we're sequestering carbon in our soils on the properties that we work on. And so I'll say, like, we are sequestering carbon one lawn at a time, you know, and we're, you know, we have about 140 accounts now. So that's a lot of square footage. I mean, we are, you know, we're not too far from about 1 million square feet of land that we work on. And, you know, it's soil, I think it's getting better, but like we have drastically underestimated the power of soil
Mm-hmm.
and soil actually being able to really help with this, climate crisis that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
And there's research out there that shows that if we as a globe actually started to care for our soils the right way, which is meaning like keeping carbon in them, you
Mm-hmm.
know, changing industrial agriculture, stopping, the tillage, and basically just like keeping ground cover on soils across the globe, whether that's crops or cover crops or forests or
Yeah.
plants, basically.
Mm-hmm.
We would not be releasing so much carbon up into the atmosphere. And even with our habits of driving and all the other things that we do, that it's putting carbon up into the atmosphere, if we actually you know um, you know did not have so much bare soil on this globe with industrial agriculture and deforestation and that kind of thing, um, it 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 could turn around in much less time. I mean, like than if we just stopped driving cars or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So
The
it's kind
impact
of
is huge.
it's huge. There's a book, I would say, like, if anybody wanted to read more about that, there's a book called Kiss the Ground,
Mm-hmm.
and that talks a lot about like if we started focusing on soil on a global level, like how amazingly hugely beneficial that would be to just our climate, and sequestering carbon. So yeah, so yes, I mean, and that was the other thing when I took that course, back in 2009, and I realized just the amount of chemicals. I mean, even in this country, more pesticides and synthetic fertilizers go down on home lawns in this country than on all the agriculture in this country.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's insane.
it is insane. So, just to think about the fact that, one of my main things that drives me is just like, I am trying to take as many, chemicals off of land as I possibly can,
Mm-hmm.
and I can do that on this kind of smaller scale, which is people's backyards, basically.
But you've made it your mission, and you're not only helping people, but I love that you are so education driven. You're like, when we talked about doing this podcast, we sat down and came up with 15 different topics we could
Yeah.
focus on. And
Yeah.
it's just such great information. And it's just, you don't know what you don't know. So you being
Yep.
willing to share what you do know
Oh,
is
yeah.
so beneficial to everyone. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was why I thought like your idea of doing this was so fantastic, because, and I'm really realizing now as we're talking, like what a resource like podcasts like this can be, because um it's just another way to get the information out there, and truly I'm still, just when I think that, even though, now, I mean, you can turn the TV on and you see those commercials about Roundup, and if you've been exposed to Roundup and then diagnosed with lymphoma and that kind of, and then, I mean, Bayer, who owns Roundup now, they now own Monsanto, which created Roundup. They just paid out like $10 billion in lawsuits for people who had used Roundup and then gotten lymphoma from it. But still to this day, I mean, just a couple weeks ago, I was, going to a lawn, and I look over, and there's a gentleman out there in his driveway, shorts on, no, really no protective clothing or anything like that, with his little, little handheld bottle of Roundup with the little, hose and little gun that comes with it. It's like perfectly, created for the homeowner to just go out and easily, kill weeds. And he's in his driveway, killing weeds that are coming up like in the cracks in the pavement or whatever.
mm-hmm.
And I mean, yes, I definitely think, and I do bump into this, there are people that do know, and but they don't care because it's
Yeah.
that instant gratification thing. You know, it's
Mhm.
very easy to use these chemicals. It's
Right.
not easy to, you know, potentially bend over and pull a weed out or something.
Mhm.
Although there's some really fantastic vinegar products on the market um, that work amazingly well at killing weeds in your driveway.
Really? Good to
Oh
I'm
yeah,
gonna have to research that
oh
later.
yes, I can give you names. But yeah, it's just again, it's just like, you know, it's it's been this lawn chemical thing has actually really been in our culture for a long time because it all came out of um this psychology that we have of like just having this perfect monoculture lawn, you know.
Yeah.
And my one of the probably biggest, you know, things for me is that like I am trying to shift the perception of what the perfect American dream lawn is.
Mhm.
It's been a chemical lawn, you know. It's not and really moving now where we're at in, you know, present day, like it it needs to be it you know, not a chemical lawn anymore.
Mhm.
And I feel like that has been working very, very well with the people that I work with and the people that I chat with, and the things that we talk about, that people are realizing that, oh yeah, you know, the perfect lawn really is a lawn that is you know, full of biodiversity, has some clover, has a few blooming dandelions in the spring, because hey, guess what, dandelions are one of the first sources of nectar and pollen for all these like awesome little pollinator species that
Mhm.
are going to give you all of those delicious fruits and veggies that you want to eat all summer long. Like we need
Yeah.
those guys, you know.
Mhm.
So um that's my big thing, is just shifting the perception away from the chemical lawn to the, you know, the natural
Healthy lawn.
yes, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Well, I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for introducing us to you and Complete Land Organics today. And I'm so excited because we've got Britt and I have some other topics we're going to
Yeah,
cover. We talked about pets and kids in lawns and wells in lawns. And I mean, one of the big ones I know that stuck out in your mind was how lawn care impacts, especially along the coastline. So, I mean, I think that
yes,
will be huge, and that's really important to cover.
yes, we have, I think we have many paths and avenues that we can go down with, like there's really so much to it, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you could talk forever about just the biology piece of it, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we've opened up a really good door, and I think it can just keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you for doing this with me, and I'm so excited to kind of just continue to learn. So, thank you for sharing your insight and your knowledge.
You're welcome. I'm very excited about doing this too.
Good. Well, have a great day, and we'll end this podcast because I know we're creeping up on our time, but
Yep.
we look forward to speaking with you again.
Hey, sounds good.
All right.